Hey, Chris. Some people might remember you from actually playing in the Poker Bowl back in 2007, and you were part of the Cincinnati team that won that year. Can you tell us
Yeah,
a little bit about how you got involved with that, and maybe a few stories of that year on the tournament?
yeah, sure. That's probably of the I don't know 20, 30 plus years I've been playing poker. Probably the funnest weekend I've ever had. A friend of mine, David from Cincinnati. He's from Cincinnati. David, who owned the team. He's got like a card company, and he owns a company that puts puzzles together. If you ever go into Borders Books or any of those bookstores, there's like trash and trinkets in the front. A lot of his company makes a lot of that stuff, so he's getting into cards. With
Okay.
that said, with that said, he had a contact to some of the bigger card makers, and they said, you know what, some card. There's a guy on the West Coast his name was John Nightingale, and he's looking for cards for this new tournament. And make a long story short, Dave got in contact with him, and he said to David, you know what, since you're helping me out, I'll give you a discount to put a team in the bowl. And he came to me knowing I play poker and says, what do you think? You want to put a team together? I said, absolutely. So he had some friends, we had some friends, and we put a team together, and it was six per team. And the only pro we got, and he's not even a pro, he's only a pro because he finished second or runner-up to Joe Hatcham, I believe, in the '04 World Series of Poker, maybe.
Right.
It's Steve Daneman. I think it was Steve Daneman.
How cool is
So it was,
that?
yeah, it was really cool. He's the nicest guy too. He's a real nice guy.
So
it was
you
basically, yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
you knew Steve Daneman before that then, or
We
was
saw each other leading up to the Poker Bowl because it was a team event. So they had, I can't remember how many teams they had. Each team represented a city, and we represented Cincinnati. There was a Detroit team, and Detroit was funny. It had Scotty Wynn, Kenna James, Mark Seif, and Kathy Liebert. They're not, I don't think by today's standards, they're as famous as some of the locals, but even then, you kind of know who they are. But they represented Detroit, which I always think was pretty funny, because none of them were from Detroit.
they were pretty well known back then too, actually.
Oh, yeah, they were. I don't know how well known they are now, but back then I remember Mark Seif was a pretty well known poker player.
Yep. So was all of them were.
Yeah.
Kathy Liebert, all of them were pretty well named people,
Well
I
known.
think.
Yeah, but so we put a team together, and we went out there, and we were complete underdogs. I mean, we weren't written about. None of the advertisements had Cincinnati involved, and David was mad because he was kind of he had a little bit of stake in it as a business person. So he's like, you know what? I remember we went to, before the Poker Bowl was in October, and we went about 2 or 3 times to Atlantic City because we were all East Coast people. Even though I'm from Detroit, I had East Coast ties, so I could go stay with friends. And we went back there and we practiced. And the Poker Bowl was not outright collusion, but you could, with your teammate, strategize to bring chips to either each other if somebody's low on chips, or you could obviously make squeeze plays with other players. So we went there and we just completely played sit and go tournaments the whole weekend. And we did really well in sit and goes. We paired teammates. It was me and Ari. Steve Daneman, I think, played with Steve Zoyne, and then Vinny Napolitano played with, I can't think of who our sixth team member was. So make a long story, we went into the Poker Bowl really prepared. And the funny thing about Daneman is he is kind of he's got a weird stance with poker players. He's a working guy. He likes working, and he takes poker as fun. And he hates, and I shouldn't say the word hate, but I remember he had a kind of a real funky attitude towards some of the pros, and he really wanted to win. He goes, all of us were amateurs. We got to win. We got to win. We got to beat these guys. This is what they. So I remember he was really big on that. So he was psyched, and we went in and we did really well. We ended up winning, but it was a whole mess afterwards. So because Nightingale, the guy who ran the tournament, each team supposedly was supposed to put up, the whole prize pool was $1 million. So each team was supposed to put up $60,000. Each player was supposed to pay $10,000 for an entry fee. Well, I didn't pay an entry fee because David asked me to play as his guest. Daneman didn't pay. Dave basically put up the money for us, but he only put up $30,000 because he was a card sponsor. So with that said, every time they went to go get a team, put a team together, all the pros said, well, I'm not paying. I'm a pro. The who's who was at the weekend. You had I don't know, I'm trying to think. TJ Cludio was there, Lane Flack, Chris Ferguson, Lee Watkinson, Gavin Griffin, Daniel Alahi, Hoyt Hawkins, Michael Mizrachi. These guys were not coming and putting up $10,000 to play the team event. So each team almost got like a rebate. With that said, when you give so many rebates out, where's the $1 million prize pool? It's just not there.
Right.
So when I remember we won and played against, they had a Friday and a Saturday, and I can't remember, whatever it was, half of that field made it to Sunday for the final. And I remember we won. We ended up winning the whole thing. And it was Vinny against Scotty Wynn, and it was, I want to say, Alan Tesla. And those three guys went at it. We ended up...
Chainsaw?
Yeah. And we played. He is, and you think you hear Alan Kessler, him, and he was not that he wasn't good, but he was tight and just sat there, and it was really interesting. We played in that first day, but then trying to chop that pot was a whole deal. To try to chop it, because first place got the $600,000, and then the remaining six, there was 10 payouts, so 6, and the remaining teams got money. And it lasted about 45 minutes trying to chop that whole thing up, because Vinny, when there was like 6 players left, Vinny was the chip leader, but I remember, I think it was St. Louis, but Detroit had 3 players left from their team, so they obviously had the majority of the team that could win. So they wanted the majority of the money.
Oh.
And I remember Daneman saying, and I won't use foul language, we have the chip leader, let's just tell them we don't want to chop. We want to go for the $600,000.
Wow.
I remember him just telling them straight out, screw them all. I remember, we don't want to chop. We will stick, we want to stick. We want to win this clean. We don't need to chop. I remember Scotty Wynn trying to chop. They all trying to chop. Mark Seif was really trying to chop. I remember he didn't want to stop. He said, I will not stop play unless we have a deal. And we were in one corner. The other city was in another corner. We ended up coming to an agreement. I think we ended up agreeing to $45,000 each.
That's crazy.
Whoever won was $45,000, and I think the other guys took $33,000. And it was chopped funny that way. We ended up agreeing. And then I remember we wore full tilt. That was another big deal. Steve Daneman did not want to wear a full tilt badge on his shirt, but because some of the players on our team weren't as financially well as he was, he just wanted, he agreed to it. But I remember the big deal too. But yeah, my first table when I played was probably the best table I've ever played against. It was awesome.
So you said that maybe you got to play with Tom Dwan.
Yeah, Tom Dwan, and it was he just turned 21 because he made a big deal about it when he was set down. And that table I remember was Paul Wolf, Tom Dwan, Tex Bach, who I think about a year or 2 years before that was a big world. He made a couple World Series.
Right.
I don't want to say it's final tables, but he was pretty prominent in the World Series or on TV.
Yeah, he was. He made a final table. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jennifer Harmon was at my table, who was a sweetheart. She was fantastic. But Tom Dwan was at our table, and he had the switch on, and he was not shutting it off from the very first thing. Everything was raised, and but he ended up getting knocked out by my teammate. They ended up making the final table for that day, and I remember it was like Ace 10 versus Ace 9. They both got it all in, and our teammate Ari had Ace 9, Tom had Ace 10. It went to the river, and I remember Tom Dwan, clear as day, yelling, "Give him a 10 of clubs." 10 of clubs hit, and we won. He got knocked out. So. I don't know why he yelled it, but he screamed it. Give the man a 10 of clubs, and he gave him the 10 of clubs, and he said, "That was it."
Hilarious.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, it was good. It was a great time. It was really fun. And then the funny thing is, to extend on it, when we chopped all the money up, when we won, I think we won. It had to be about 1:30 in the morning Vegas time. And I'll never, we're making phone calls to family back home. We won. Nightingale, who ran the tournament, was trying to go around telling the pros first for their money, $33,000, that he had cut them a check, which is a no-no. So they all were not leaving the room until we get cash. So he ended up having to make a deal because he didn't have the money. I mean, he could, to get Doyle Brunson to play, you had to pay for free.
Wow.
So like I said earlier, each player was supposed to pay $10,000, which would be $60,000 per team to make the prize pool. He only had about $500,000 of $1 million prize pool.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, he couldn't pay everybody. So I remember he paid us he gave me he cut me a check from the Palms. No, but he cut a personal check from his corporation that owned the Poker Bowl, for $15,000, and he gave me $25,000 cash for every team. That's how he did it.
Wow.
And when we got home, I remember he telling everybody, "Don't cash the check for a week." And I remember Scotty Wynn, in his classic, "Hey baby," he says, "This sucks, man. I'm not dealing with this." And it was crazy. Then, to make a long story short, all the checks bounced.
Oh my God!
All the checks bounced when we got home, and it took us until New Year's. We all had to get on a conference call. I remember David, the guy who owned our team, says, "You have to call the president or whoever he was, the guy who ran the Palms." It wasn't a Maloof brother, but it was the VP or the president.
Right.
And I'll never forget, as clear as day. I called there. I got to say, and I'm thinking to myself, it's like calling the president. It's like calling, I don't know, like Steve Wynn.
Right.
Trying to get through. Well, I called this guy, his secretary. I said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Chris Manzo. And what are you calling about?" I said, "I played in the Poker Bowl, it was a poker tournament." I said, "She was your team from Team Cincinnati?" I said, she goes, "Hold on a second." Second, let the guy get on the phone. He goes, "Chris," he goes, "give me your address." I said, I gave my address. He goes, "All right, you'll have a check next week. Just do me a favor, cash it, and we'll be done with it." That's it. Thanks. Boom. Check came last week. I cashed it, and that was it.
Wow.
Well, they didn't want any problems because
Yeah.
it could have really caused them a lot of gaming control problems.
Right.
Because of all that issue. Anyhow, I think Nightingale went bankrupt, and he ended up selling the Poker Bowl, that whole concept, a year or 2 years later, to some company. And that whole Poker Bowl was taped by Fox Sports too. And I remember David, the guy who owned the team, he still lives in Cincinnati. He tried to get. I remember we went to Vegas about 3 months later on just a boys' trip, and the film cans are sitting in some warehouse in Vegas somewhere. And it would be great to see the film because they filmed all the, but they're sitting somewhere.
So they filmed it, but it never aired?
Never aired. No, it was supposed to be on Fox, on Fox or CBS. It was supposed to be on national TV on a Sunday. They had a deal. I remember them filming. Fox was there doing some filming work. Yeah. So and I think that's part of the money he used too, was to pay Fox or CBS. I forget which company it was. But I think the money that was brought in for the prize pool, he used to pay the television portion of it off. So he really had no money.
Wow.
It was a real mess. It was real bad. But anyhow, but it was a good. But overall, it was a really, it was a great experience. It was awesome. I wish some of the coverage was a little better, but it wasn't. I have some pictures from it. I think I sent you one, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I have a bad beat story from it. I got knocked out my first day from Jennifer Harmon. I raised, she raised, I put her all in. I had ace queen, she had ace jack. The flop was nothing, turn was nothing. She spiked the jack, knocked me out.
Wow.
Yeah, she gave me a big hug. She was a real sweetheart. We actually share the same wedding anniversary date, which was really cool. So,
Oh, that's
really
kind of
nice.
cool.
Yeah, she was a real sweetheart. Anyhow, but yeah, it was a great experience.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun, and
Yeah, it was.
And even though it was kind of a hard time getting your money, it was probably, for back then, it was probably a pretty good payday. So
Yeah, it was a really good payday, yeah.